Gas leaks, slips, blackouts, I called it bad luck. Right up to the night I found my forged will and the bug in my ceiling, planted by my own children. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Henry Cole. I am 71 years old, a widower, and a grandfather to two perfect little human beings who think pancakes taste better when Grandpa burns the first batch. I built houses for 4 decades, some of which are still standing straighter than a few of my bones. For the past year, I believed my life had slid into a ditch of misfortune, slips, breaks, dizzy spells, small humiliations that make a man feel like the world is done using him. It began after Thanksgiving. I fell from my ladder in the garage and cracked 2 ribs. The doctor blamed age and gravity. 2 months later, a streak of oil appeared on the basement steps. I went down hard, head first, and woke to the whistle of an oxygen line. Transient global amnesia, a neurologist said, as if my brain had simply taken a walk without me. March brought brakes that screamed on the downhill like a trapped thing. I pumped and pumped, rolled through a stop sign, and only pure stubbornness kept my bumper from kissing a cement truck. The mechanic shook his head gravely and asked where I had it serviced last. A line had been nicked clean. By April, a low hiss woke me at 3 a.m. and I found the gas stove knob turned just enough to leak. June put me face down on the kitchen tiles, the linoleum cold against my cheek, while my granddaughter Emma, 6 years old and brave, knelt beside me holding my hand and whispering, "Wake up, Grandpa, wake up." Unlucky. That is the word I used to keep from crying. My son, Daniel, told me I needed to stop working on ladders. My daughter, Lauren, said maybe I should stop driving. They brought me teas for my nerves and powders for my joints and dietary supplements that promised miracles printed in small font. Daniel is 38, handsome in that barbered way, a manager at a chain of home stores. He carries stress like a badge and speaks to receptionists as if they are vending machines. Lauren is 36, a personal trainer with a soothing voice for her clients and ice in her tone when bills appear. She married Evan, who has a grip like a dead fish and never says sorry. They were good children once, and because of that I tried to make their adulthood easier. When my wife, Sarah, died, I rewrote my will. The house and the 7 acres that go with it, my retirement accounts, the little lake place with a dock where I taught Daniel to swim and where Emma caught her first sunfish, I split everything evenly between my 2. I kept physical copies of the documents in my safe and gave my lawyer, a woman named Varga who has seen everything, the originals. I believed that settled it. I believed many things then. After the kitchen collapse, a young doctor in a white coat with a boy's face said, "Your blood shows benzodiazepines, Mr. Cole. Are you on anything like that?" "I do not even like aspirin," I told him. He frowned. "The levels are low. It could be cross-reactivity or, maybe something over the counter." I nodded and drifted back into a sleep that felt like drowning with a gentle hand holding my head under. When I got home, I threw out every tea bag and vitamin in the cabinet. That helped for a week. I am not a paranoid man, but a builder learns to read stress lines. Houses talk when they are failing. They crack where pressure hides. A family is not so different. You walk through the kitchen of a home and you can tell if the couple who lives there speaks in kindness or contempt by how the drawers slam. I started listening to mine. It was a little thing at first, cup handles left facing away from me on the shelf when I know I keep them to the right. The front door lock sticky one morning, as if someone had tried a key, failed, and used a tool. The smoke detector in the hallway blinking a faint red when I walked by, it had not done that before. A man keeps track of his own things, especially when he has lived in the same walls for 40 years. Emma's drawing saved me. I do not use that kind of sentence lightly, because phrases like that turn into fluff when you place them on a page, but the image is burned into me. She sat at my kitchen table on a Wednesday, crayons scattered, tongue between her teeth. "It is me and my brother and you," she said proudly, holding up a stick figure triangle under a purple sun. "Daddy says I am not supposed to draw Mommy and Daddy in this one because this is your house picture." "Daddy says that?" I asked, taking the paper. She nodded, then leaned closer, conspiratorial. "And Mommy says we should not tell you about the new paper we did on your special desk because it would ruin the surprise." "What paper?" She put a finger to her lips, then whispered, "The one from the printer that says you give us the house." Children do not lie with the precision adults do. They use the truth like a rag that leaves streaks but still shows what you are looking at. When they left, I sat at my desk until the sun went down and the purple turned to black outside the window. My desk has 2 drawers that anyone can find and one I built myself behind a false panel in the kickboard. I keep my life there. The folder with my will lay where it always lay. The originals at Vargas, I reminded myself. The copies here. I opened the folder and felt for the texture of the paper. My lawyer uses a heavier stock that whispers when you turn it. Nothing had changed. What had changed was the smoke detector light. I pulled the casing down and found a tiny camera wedged in its belly. It was one of those cheap ones with a clip slot for a micro card. When I pushed the card out, my fingers went cold. That night I sat at the kitchen table with my magnifying lamp and watched 3 months of my own life from a ceiling's point of view. It was remarkable how much you miss standing inside an event. From above, you see patterns. Daniel bringing me coffee without asking if I wanted any. Daniel's hand dipping into his pocket, fingers working at something before he leaned over my cup. Lauren calling me to the sink, asking me to look at a slow drain, while Evan stayed behind in the kitchen with my glass of water. Evan's palm over the top, fingers rubbing the rim, the water cloudy when he stepped away. Once, I saw Emma push a cookie across the table to me, then watched Lauren snap, "No, baby, Grandpa's tummy cannot have sugar right now," and take the cookie back even though I am not diabetic. After they left, I found the cookie in the trash. It smelled like almond. I did not eat it. I did not sleep that night either. The next morning, I took my coffee black and made it myself. Nobody touched the cup. The accidents slowed. I knew what to do with a feeling like that. When a wall tells you it is bowing, you do not set a chair against it and hope. You open up the drywall and you see which stud is split. The first thing you do is gather your tools. I sent an email to Varga from my old desktop computer because I do not trust phones for the same reason I do not trust a nail gun when a hammer will do. I wrote, "Visit requested. Personal." I printed the videos from the smoke detector onto a little chip and drove to her office without telling anyone where I was heading. Elena Varga has eyes that could make a gate swing shut. She has gray hair she does not dye and a mouth that says she gets to the point for a living. I showed her the camera and the chip. I told her about the doctor's test and the brake line and the gas stove and the falls. I told her about Emma's drawing. I told her about the candies that tasted like nothing and the tea that tasted like everything. I did not cry. She watched without nodding. When the videos ended, she picked up the phone and said to her assistant, "I need a forensic document examiner. Not an idiot." And called Detective Alden. "Yes, that Alden. You understand," she said when she hung up, "we are going to need more than this. This is very compelling, but anyone can say tea was tainted. We need chain of custody. We need fingerprints. We need samples. We need a timeline. And we need to find out who printed what on whose printer. I thought of the notary stamp blue on the corner of that will I found, and all the air moved out of my lungs. I have not told you the worst part, I said. The look she gave me said she believed there would be a worse part. Last Sunday, I said, Lauren asked me to drive her and the kids to get ice cream after church. When we came back, she said she left her jacket inside and ran to get it. She was in the house maybe 8 minutes. On Tuesday, when I went to change the filter in the furnace, a stack of papers had fallen into the return by the vent. Most of them were flyers. But wedged in the corner was what you just called the point, a will I did not sign. Durable power of attorney I did not sign. A healthcare proxy I did not sign. And photographs of my signature pulled from old birthday cards Sarah wrote me and from checks. Varga did not blink. Where are those now? In my truck, I said. I wore gloves. She held my gaze for a long second. Good, she said. Open the glove compartment for me. People like to believe evil comes in dramatic packages. In my experience it comes in manila. Varga flipped through the pages one by one. The power of attorney named Daniel Stone and Lauren Stone as co-attorneys in fact, which is a phrase I have never used in my life. It had a notary stamp from a name I did not know and a number we could run. The will left the house and acreage to Lauren and the lake place to Daniel outright. There was a clause in there like a hook hidden in the bait. If I became incapacitated, the following provision would trigger, allowing my co-attorneys to liquidate assets for my benefit, and I would have no recourse to challenge it later. My signature sloped like a drunk man walking downhill. I sign in a straight line even on a boat, and Varga knew it. Varga made 3 calls that day. One to the forensic examiner, who wanted copies so they could compare the ink to known samples, analyze the strokes, and look for tremor patterns. One to her pet detective, Alden, who I learned had a soft spot for older folks and a hard spot for anybody who thought they could use an elder like a bank. And one to the prosecutor's office, but she did not say much on that one. She listened, said, understood, and hung up. Then she looked at me and said, if you are willing, we will set a table for your children and invite them to sit down. But I want a patrol car down the road, and I want microphones in your kitchen, and I want a lab on standby. And Henry, do not drink anything you do not open yourself. It is a strange thing to prepare dinner for the people who may be trying to harm you. It took me all afternoon to stop shaking enough to cut onions. I set the table like I always do when they come. I had told them we would talk about the future. Those 3 words are a bridge anyone will cross. Lauren arrived with the children just before 5, all bright smiles and too sweet perfume. Daniel came at 5:15 carrying a pie and wearing the same watch I gave him when he graduated. He hugged me in the doorway while his eyes flicked to the kitchen counter where I had set the teapot, and later, the detective would freeze the frame and zoom in on his fingers moving in his pocket as if petting a coin. The microphones Varga's tech had glued under my table recorded things my ears chose not to hear for years, the tone Daniel uses when he wants something, the pity Lauren uses like a wet cloth to soften what she knows is cruel. Their words came out of them like marbles rolled down a chute. We have been so worried about you, Dad, Lauren said, and swept Emma away from the stove. We have been up late talking about how to make sure you are taken care of. Taken care of, Daniel repeated, folding his hands the way television pastors do. So we did a little work on your behalf. We found a notary. We talked to a lawyer who helps people at this stage of life. We already finished most of the paperwork. What paperwork? I asked, even though the papers were in Varga's hands and a cruiser sat one bend down my road. The responsible kind, Lauren said. Power of attorney, advance directive. Henry, she had started calling me by my first name more in the last month. Nobody is saying you are not capable. This is about peace of mind. I poured myself water from a bottle I had purchased that morning. I poured them water from a second bottle that was identical in every way except that I had traded the caps earlier so I could track who touched what when. Varga's lab guy was going to have a fun time with that. I set my bottle by my plate and the other by theirs. Dad, Daniel said, leaning forward. There is another thing. The will. The one you did with your lady lawyer. It was not very fair to Lauren. She has the kids. She should have the house. The acreage is too much for you to manage. I have managed more than this, I said softly. Not anymore, he said, not so softly. If Detective Alden had not been sitting in my laundry room with the door cracked, I do not know what I would have done. Instead, I asked them to pass the potatoes. Somewhere a man in a van listened to the dull song of a family carving itself up. After dinner, they moved us to papers. Lauren pulled a folder from her purse, as if we had not had a similar folder riding in my glove box that afternoon. The power of attorney inside was a copy of the one I had found in the furnace return, except this one had a different date and a cleaner signature. My signature. We waited for the right moment to show you, she said. The right moment, I repeated. I signed nothing. I smiled and nodded while Daniel slid 2 blue boxes of tea across my counter, the same brand he brought last month. This one is calming, he said, tapping the chamomile. This one is for sleep. His fingers lingered on the sleep box like he would have carved my initials into it if he thought it would get him what he wanted. I put the boxes in the pantry. In the night, after the cruiser had rolled away and my house had returned to the kind of quiet you can hear in your teeth, I took those boxes and drove them to a lab where a man in a tie took them from me with tongs. 2 days later Alden called. The tea grounds have zolpidem dust on them, he said, and alprazolam residue. Low doses. Cumulative dosing would match the patterns in your blood. The cups from Sunday have your son's prints, the water bottle they drank from has your daughter's prints and also something that looks like powder on the rim. We have one more thing. What? I asked, though I think I knew. The notary whose stamp they used, Alden said. She died in 2018. Her stamp was stolen from her widower's garage in 2019. We have fingerprints on the stamp's base that match your son-in-law, Evan. Crimes arrive in postage, small, forgettable things until the day a package shows up that makes the floor sag. Alden gave me the rest like a contractor walking a client through a terrible job. Lauren's search history included, how much alprazolam to calm anxiety in elderly, forgery consequences will, and, how to loosen brake line. Evan's included, notary stamp purchase online, and, monofilament strength test. Daniel's had the most boring and most telling, permanent power of attorney versus general, trigger clause will healthcare decisions, and, near the end, how long zolpidem stays in blood. I allowed myself to sit down. I had not done that for 20 minutes. What now? I asked. Now, Alden said, if you are willing, we set the trap the rest of the way. I am not a man who enjoys the word trap. It makes me think of the ground opening under a deer's hooves. But you should know this, in the end, they set it for themselves. The legal part goes slower than you want if you are bleeding, and faster than you want if you are trying to keep yourself upright. Varga filed for an emergency protective order. The judge signed it after watching the videos and listening to the audio and reading what the lab wrote and looking at me the way a man looks at a house when he sees smoke while children are sleeping upstairs. That order kept Daniel and Lauren off my property. It required supervised visitation if they wanted to see me and court approval if they wanted the grandchildren anywhere near me, which felt cruel to the kids even if it kept them safe. It also froze any attempt to file documents in my name at the county recorder's office. Alden wanted one last thing. I know this is a lot, he said. But if they have been staging accidents, they will not stop now. Would you be willing to let us watch one? For how long? I asked. Until they think they have you, he said. So we set a Saturday like bait on a line. Lauren texted me Friday night. Thinking of dropping kids off so you and they can make pancakes. We will pick them up later. Evan can help you with the basement steps. She followed the text with a heart. I stared at the little heart until my chest clenched. If I told you I have never wished her a different life, I would be a liar. Saturday morning I made pancakes for Emma and her little brother, Owen, who is 3 and has a laugh like sparrows. While my griddle hissed, Alden and his team tucked themselves like ghosts in my garage. They left one small camera on a shelf in the basement, a place where any man doing work on steps would not think to look because the camera was disguised as a jar of screws. At 10:43, a car pulled into my drive. Lauren came in smiling too hard, kissed Emma twice, pecked Owen's hair, and then dragged him back toward the door. We are going to run to Target, she said brightly. Evan will be here if you need anything. Evan stood on the porch with that same dead-eyed politeness. He carried a tool bag. He did not say hello. I do not like men in my basement who do not say hello. Loose treads, he said finally, waving an arm at the steps. I will secure them. Take your time, I said, and set Emma up at the table with colored paper and Owen with a pile of blocks. The jar camera watched as Evan slid his hand into his bag and removed a spool of monofilament, the kind fishermen use when they do not want the trout to see the line. He tied the line across the 5th and 6th riser, tight as a guitar string, invisible from above if you walk down with your granddaughter in front of you because she needed help carrying the laundry basket. He took a small bottle of clear gel out next, dabbed it under the top tread like a sheen of nothing, and tested the slide with his fingertips. Then he looked up. The camera watched his face fall a little when he saw a red dot in the corner, very faint, blinking. He tried to pry the lens with a screwdriver. He could not. He stepped back and forced a laugh that nobody heard. He cut the line, wiped the gel, and, because he is not a man who likes to leave evidence without a plan, he tightened one actual screw on one actual riser so he could tell himself he had done a thing honestly. Then he came upstairs and told me he had to go. Lauren just texted, he said. Change of plans. He did not know Detective Alden had already texted me, we saw enough. By dinner time, Alden had a warrant in hand. They served it at Daniel's place and at Lauren's. They took computers, phones, the little bag of pills that looked like vitamins in Daniel's sock drawer, the notary stamp in Evan's toolbox, and 3 copies of my will in Lauren's office labeled "Final" in square block letters. They took a text thread that made me sit down with my head in my hands. It began with Lauren, 6 months ago, we have to do this slowly. He is too stubborn to sign. If he does not sign, we are stuck. Daniel answered, you handle the drinks. I handle the paper. Evan can handle the rest. Handle the rest. Words with no specifics are the worst kind. Arrests do not look like television unless you watch the eyes of the person being cuffed. Daniel's flicked everywhere like a fly looking for a window. Lauren's went flat. Evans never had much there to begin with. Detective Alden charged them with forgery, possession of stolen notary equipment, conspiracy to commit fraud, assault for the dosing, and reckless endangerment for the brake line and gas. There were more charges later, when the lab clocked the substances and the prosecutor added, administering a noxious substance, because the tea had alprazolam ground into it and a sedative that was not over the counter. The staged accidents became a separate stack of counts when Alden pulled footage off a neighbor's porch cam that showed Daniel under my truck one evening with something in his hand. The legal words stacked until they became a wall no one climbs without a ladder and a good lawyer, and I suspect they did not have that kind of lawyer anymore. If you think I felt triumph then, you are wrong. I felt like an attic packed with dead wasps. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the place where Emma had drawn me standing under a purple sun, and I put my face in my hands. These are my children, I thought, and the thought sat like a heavy thing I could not lift. There were the grandchildren to think of next. Emma and Owen had been in cars with people who thought the world was a set of levers. They had eaten at tables where the main course was somebody else's money. The house where they slept had been a place where their parents whispered about dosing an old man while those children brushed their teeth. I do not say any of this to be cruel. I say it because truth is the only thing that keeps you from drowning in grief when you cannot find blame big enough to fill the hole. Varga turned up at my door with 2 binders and an expression that meant she had not slept much. "We are filing for temporary custody," she said. "Emergency. The children need stability, and their parents are unfit at this moment by any reasonable standard. The court will appoint a guardian ad litem. We will welcome that. We are not hiding. You will do a home study. You will pass. You have pictures of pancakes and a swing set you built with your hands. You will be honest when they ask if you can keep up physically. You will not pretend you have more capacity than you have, and you will promise to ask for help. And you will be able to tell them, with evidence, that the safest place for those children is here while their parents face the consequences of their choices." I said, "I am an old man." "You are an old man with eyes that will not lie to a judge," she said. "That matters." The hearing took place in a courtroom that smelled like paper and end-of-day coffee. The judge was a woman with kind hair and hard hands. The guardian ad litem, a small man with a big heart, had already visited my house and sat at my kitchen table and asked Emma what pancakes taste like at Grandpa's. "Bernie," she had said, grinning. Owen had put a block in his hand and said, "Help." The man laughed and did. Then he walked my fence line and checked the gate like a father does and asked me if I had someone who could take the children a few hours each day so I could breathe. I told him about my neighbor, Mrs. King, who runs a daycare out of her living room and who has strong arms and eyes that see farther than most people's. I told him about my church that is not interested in turning everything into a sermon. I told him the truth. I love them better than I love air, and I am not too proud to ask for help. Lauren's lawyer tried to paint my house as a place where an old man fainted on tile. Varga stood up with a lab report in her hand. "He fainted because they drugged him," she said, and her voice was a nail hammered in straight. The judge read. She looked at the photographs of the monofilament. She watched the clip of Evan's fingers. She looked at the carbon copy of the notary stamp. She read the text where Daniel typed, "The accident will happen either way." Then she gave me 2 things I never expected to hold in the same sentence, custody and hope. On the evidence before me, the judge said, "I grant temporary custody of Emma and Owen Stone to their grandfather, Henry Cole. The parents shall have supervised visitation at a center approved by the court, to be arranged by probation and the guardian ad litem. We will review in 90 days, and again in 6 months, to assess progress and safety. Mr. Cole, I trust you understand the gravity of what you are taking on." "I do," I said, and my voice did not shake. "I will not tell you it was easy, because you will know I am lying. Grief does not pack its bags because a judge stamps a paper. Children are softer than that. The first week, Emma woke 3 times a night and came to my doorway without speaking, as if her feet were taking attendance. I put a blanket at the end of my bed and told her she could have my foot in the night if she needed to make sure I stayed. Owen cried for his mother the way a storm cries for land. We sat in the rocking chair beside the window at 2 in the morning while the neighbor's porch light flickered and the refrigerator ticked and he hiccuped into my shirt pocket. I sang songs from when my wife was still here and had a voice like cinnamon. My voice is not that voice, but the songs do not know the difference. We settled into a rhythm that would make a metronome nod. Breakfast, school, playing in the yard where I fixed the broken swing and darned the fence and hung wind chimes that do not make a sound unless the air is honest. Supervised visits at the center where they paint the walls pale yellow on purpose and the toys are clean. Emma drew a picture there one day and handed it to me shyly after. It was the 3 of us again, under a purple sun, except this time there were 4 stick figures. The 4th had hair like rain. "That is Mommy," she said. "She is not with us in the house now. But she is in our picture because pictures are for wishes sometimes." On Thursday evenings, I go to a circle in a room under the library where other caretakers sit with coffee that tastes like pencils and say things like, "I did not think I could do it either," and, "You do not have to be everything to be enough." On Saturdays, Mrs. King takes the kids for 2 hours and I walk to the lake and sit on the dock and stare at the place where the water looks like falling sky and I let myself feel what I do not let myself feel when little feet are running down my hall. The trial for Daniel and Lauren and Evan trudged like a pickup with a bed full of wet sand. The charges multiplied, some were dismissed, some were reduced to words I did not know 40 years ago but do now. The only part of that slow grind that matters here is the morning I stood and read a statement into a microphone that made my teeth buzz. I said, "I will never understand how my children became the kind of people who would do this. But I will not let hate do to me what greed did to them." The judge sentenced Evan to prison time for the reckless endangerment and the stolen stamp and the tampering. Daniel pled to forgery and conspiracy and the dosing. Lauren pled to conspiracy and to the acts that made her name show up in a search history that looked like sorrow typed out in blocks. They cried. Daniel looked at me once in that room and I looked back because I could not pretend that boy I taught to swim did not hold my eyes. He opened his mouth like he had something to say and the bailiff shook his head. I went home and made pancakes for dinner. At our 6-month review, the guardian ad litem recommended that custody stay with me. He wore a tie with little guitars on it. He told the judge Emma's drawings had more color. He said Owen's laugh sounded like sparrows again. He said I ask for help when I need it and that I keep my medications in a high cabinet that takes a step stool to reach and I installed a lock on my gas stove that looks ridiculous but works. The court made it official in the only way courts can, with paper and stamps and a sense that people with robes are trying to hold back the tide with their hands. Custody to continue with Mr. Cole, the judge said. Reunification efforts with the parents are suspended pending completion of their sentences and demonstrated progress in counseling and compliance with court-ordered conditions. It is strange the things that feel like victory when you are old. Tuesday mornings when Emma ties her shoes without crying. The day Owen peed in the toilet and looked at me like he had discovered the Pacific and I clapped as if he had. The phone that does not ring at 2 a.m. The silence that does not sting. 2 months ago, I sold the lake place. I know that will sound like surrender to you if you wore your teenage summer across those boards like I did, but hear me. I sold it because my granddaughter does not remember the water like I do. She will make different memories in a different place. With the money, Varga helped me set up a trust that carries my grandchildren's names and nobody else's. It is ironclad, the way a beam is ironclad when you bolt it to another beam and then pour it in concrete. The old will is gone. The new one is a slender thing with very clear words. My house goes to the trust when I die. My accounts go to the trust when I die. There is a letter on top for Emma and Owen that tells them who their grandmother was and how I loved her and how she loved them without ever knowing their faces. It tells them what I forgot to teach Daniel and Lauren when I was younger and tired and thought money could stand in for time, how to tell the truth when lying would be easier, how to fix a fence when a gate sags, how to put your hand on your child's hair and say, I am here, until the world believes you. I have made mistakes that planted seeds I did not like watching grow. I am not naive enough to take a bow alone for how all this ended. There are social workers and lab men and one detective with patience and a furious justice who held my hand with her eyes and a lawyer who would have taken a bite out of a filing cabinet if it tried to lie to her. There is also a small girl who whispered about a paper at a printer and saved a man's life without knowing it, and a little boy who likes sparrows. On a Wednesday evening not long ago, we ate pancakes for supper. Emma tells me putting strawberries on top makes them healthy. Owen insists we burn one as a sacrifice for the griddle and throw it away as a ritual, then we laugh like it is all new. The porch light glowed. The wind chimes made honest music. Across the kitchen, the smoke detector blinked a steady green. I looked up and said, we are all right, because sometimes you have to say a thing out loud before you can believe it is true. I am not unlucky. I was targeted, and then I fought, and then I won. The winning does not look like jail bars and verdicts to me. It looks like a purple sun drawn too big for the paper and 3 stick figures under it, holding hands.
Greetings, and thanks for spending your time with us today. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. I want to wish you a peaceful day or a restful evening, wherever you may be. Take care, and we'll see you next time.